Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have a great show for you this week. We're heading right through the middle of October, the middle of fall. We're going to talk about some sports cars in the news segment to lead things off. F-Type, well, some maybe not great news there, but we're getting an interesting model, perhaps on its way out, riding off into the sunset. There's a new BMW M2. If you haven't seen it, well, you need to see it. That's just, you got to look at these pictures. Then we'll break down kind of what it means. And, of course, Rivian had a rough week. We'll try and figure out what that means. We've been driving some hot metal, a lot of interesting things here. The Mustang GT Ice White Edition, BMW i4, one of the more interesting BMW sedans I have driven in quite some time. Can't wait to get into that. Mercedes-AMG SL 63 and the Lexus RX 500h F Sport. We'll close things out with that. So let's bring in Road Test editor Zach Palmer. How are you?
I am doing well, and I'm excited for this podcast. I think it has a little two-door theme in it, actually. It's a lot of coupes that we're about to talk about here. So, yeah, that's right up my alley, I think. I'm doing swell. How about you?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty well. I tried a new fall beer last weekend. The Sam Adams Jacko Pumpkin or something. Jacko Lantern thing. It was good. I've been moving away from the pumpkin beers in recent years. They're just a little too spicy, a little too boozy. It's not really what I want to drink, but I tried one. Someone just handed it to me. It was at kind of a fall party sort of thing down the street. I was like, this is good. I can drink more of this. So,
it's really hit or miss with all of the pumpkin stuff, I find. Sometimes you get that perfectly blended, just enough pumpkin, but not too much. And then sometimes you drink one and you just feel like you're eating a pumpkin pie. And it's just, it's too heavy. It's too much. It's not right. You just got to find that middle ground of, just the right amount of pumpkin.
Jacko Pumpkin Ale is what it's called
Jacko
specifically.
Pumpkin.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was Jack-o'-lantern or something, a word. But it's pretty good. Give it a good try. You might like it. Let's put it that way.
I believe it. Might have to stock some up in the fridge here soon.
All right. It's easy drinking. Let's put it that way. Good to, sip while you're, waiting to pass out candy or something. But, F-Type. It is, this is sort of the final run for it. Jaguar is going to send it off in style. They didn't really get into, what's next, but it does not sound like they're going to do anything in the immediate future. So how do you break this down?
Yeah, man. I mean, this is sort of it for the F-Type, it sounds like. Jaguar has basically said, this, we have this 75 model is going to be the last and final model out there, which is a pretty big deal since, I don't know, the F-Type has, been Jaguar's signature model for a long while now. And it's honestly been their most fun car to drive too. So for enthusiasts everywhere, obviously this is a bit of sad news for us. I know that my favorite thing about the F-Type has always been that 5-liter supercharged V8 engine that they have in there with the R and the SVR. There's been no SVR since they redesigned it here over the past couple of years, which has just definitely made me sad. But at least the R still has that absolutely nutty exhaust out there. As for the future of what the F-Type holds, I know that we were talking about this a little on Slack yesterday, so might as well just bring that into the podcast. But it's probably going to go electric, right? It makes a lot of sense for Jaguar to bring an electric coupe and convertible, in this really beautiful, beautiful body shape into the electric world. And, obviously you don't have the crazy exhaust, the wild supercharged V8 that is going to basically wake the dead everywhere you start it up, drive it, everything. But I really think that's got to be the next step for the F-Type. What do you think?
So I think it has to go electric, and it should go electric soon. We talked about this recently on the podcast where Maserati is offering a Gran Turismo in electric form. I mean, if Maserati can do it, Jaguar can do it. So I think they need to move quickly because I think there's an opportunity at this end of the market where enthusiasts want things that go fast. I think a coupe is actually a very good application because it's smaller. In some ways, you can keep it like it's simpler. You know, you can work on the weight distribution. You know what you're going for. You're going for something sporty. I mean, Tesla, like Elon did it right out of the gate with the Roadster back, geez, what was that, 12, 14 years ago? I mean, granted, it was a Lotus, but that's the move, is take like, you know, a very attractive platform and body design and just make it electric. You could do it. Dodge actually tried to do that. People forget about, geez, maybe 10 years ago. They also tried to use a Lotus and make it electric. So I think that's exactly what Jaguar should look at doing. You know, because to me, they are a sports car company. They have to make a sports car, in my opinion.
I completely agree. And if there's one thing we need more of in the electric vehicle space is, you know, we need electric sports cars. We got all of the electric crossovers that one might want in the luxury, non-luxury space. We got the hypercars, the supercars, you know, stuff like Rimac. You got the Batista from Pininfarina, but there's nothing for like $75,000 to $100,000. There's no like really high class, super fun to drive, but still, you know, within the realm of like a semi well-off person being able to afford electric sports car. And you know, that is, it's definitely coming. We know that Porsche has said that the 718 is going to go electric. You know, we're going to have an electric Boxster and Cayman eventually. But that hasn't happened yet. That's not on the market yet. And I think that Jaguar definitely has an opportunity to compete there because they make beautiful cars. And when everything is electric, I think that design matters just that much more. And I really think that an electric F-Type is going to fit the bill for a lot of people. It's going to be awesome.
Shifting gears to something that is not electric, the BMW M2. Holy cow. I think this looks awesome. Speaking of Slack conversations, the team was a little divided on this. Let's put it that way. I like it. I see like almost like a 1980s vibe. Where do you land? Just on the looks.
Yeah, I mean, so when I'm looking at it in photos here, I'm not really a fan, and I honestly, maybe some of that comes from just knowing how much I liked the previous M2. I thought it was just like such a beautiful and perfect little coupe design. And this one is just like all squares, straight edges, very few design flourishes. It's just, it is not really appealing to my sense of the brain that wants this M2 to be this like elegant, sporty car that is very simplistic and, you know, just sort of a back to basics version of a BMW sports coupe. Now, at the same time, there are some things that I really like about it. Those box fenders are like the coolest thing. You know, that's a normal thing that you get with M cars is you get wider fenders because obviously they widen the track, get you big wheels, big tires and all that. And normally you get some fender bulges, but these are on like another level of fender bulge. And it just looks so mean and so gnarly. You know, there's obviously a lot here that is carryover from the M3 and M4. That's going to be really good. I bet the car is going to drive really, really well, just because there is so much of that from M3, M4 that I already know I really like to drive. Those are fantastic cars. But yeah, I'm going to stay reserved on the styling for now. Wait till I see it in person. But initial impressions, I'm not a fan. I liked the previous one better. And I even like other BMW designs better. Like I like the M3 and M4 grille. I like the way that those things look. I like an X7, even like the BMW XM. But this is just a little stunted, a little awkward for me. But I'm curious to hear your opinion on this thing since you like it. And you know, I've seen a lot of social discourse online so far about people actually liking the design too. So this one doesn't seem as hated as, say, like the M3 or M4 when it was revealed. So far, at least.
That's fair too. I think people like, sometimes I think they have a different idea of what the M2 could actually mean. And just because it is smaller in the lineup, maybe they're willing to like accept a greater level of risk taking, if you will. I mean, I love the squared off fenders, the flares, like, even like what you see in like the M4, for example, it's not quite as extreme. And part of that, I think, is the proportions, just because the M2 is a smaller car. But you just don't see this anymore. To me, this is like, it's almost retro, and I totally love this. I think it looks great. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a rocket ship of a car. Let's put it that way. With the inline six, what did they say? They said 453 horsepower. Wow, it's going to be a lot in this thing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's the same inline six as they have in the M3 and M4. Just has 20 less horsepower. The M3 and M4 have 473 horsepower, and it has the same 406 pound-feet of torque as the M3 and M4. This is a smaller, slightly lighter car. If you're looking to buy an M4, you might want to direct your attention to the M2, honestly, because it's probably going to be a better performing car.
Yeah.
And probably a more fun car to drive. And another huge thing is they kept the manual transmission.
Yeah.
BMW has been, obviously over the past 5 to 10 years, they have removed the manual transmissions from some cars, but they have really, really done well in all of the M cars, all the full M cars, like the M3, M4, and the M2. They've kept the manual, and that means, you can go get this luxury sports car with the manual transmission. Can't say that for Mercedes. You can't say that for Audi. Can't say that for a lot of luxury brands. If you want a manual transmission, a lot of times you got to drop down into a non-luxury car. But here it is. Obviously, this is just the M2. This is not the M2 competition. If we follow the same path, I fully expect an M2 competition to come eventually. But I'm not really wanting for one right now. I mean, this is like an absolute crap ton of power, and you can get the manual or the automatic with this. And how about that interior too?
Yeah,
looks like you can get the crazy M3, M4 seats with like the weird center insert, the full carbon fiber backing. There's not really much you're missing out on here versus, say, like an M4, besides maybe a couple more inches of length. So, yeah, no, I'm definitely digging this car a lot, mechanically and how it's probably going to perform. Just got to wait to see it in person, I think, to see if it's something that I want to look at in my driveway every day.
Tell you what, the grill is actually smaller. For everybody who complains about BMW grills, it's a more traditional grill. Then you get like that lower air kind of vent situation, which, obviously they need to do. But compared to the M4, it's a little bit more of a traditional BMW setup. So, hey, it's something to consider.
Yep. If you don't like the big grill, here's a smaller grill for you.
There you go.
Just hope you like the rest of the car.
That's true. That's true. All right, so it's been a rough week for Rivian. They had a big recall. They had to recall basically every vehicle they've ever made, and the stock went through the floor, not surprisingly. And it's tricky. When you look at Rivian, they've been around for a little while. They're in some ways maybe a very close Tesla competitor in terms of being not just the obvious parallels, like an electric car maker, startup, et cetera, et cetera. But they're also like an independent car maker, and their CEO is, kind of out there a little bit. So there's some obvious, hey, this is there are some similarities to Tesla. Not, however, with the stock market, let's put it that way, because I don't think I've ever seen Tesla stock do this. So it's been, I think, a rough week for, to put it mildly. Let's put it that way. Recoverable easily. We haven't really seen the stock price jump back to where it was, but that's the way it goes. By the time this podcast drops, who knows where it will be. But they lost $2 billion in a single day, as Reuters reports. So that's a bad day at the office. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, there's been a lot of hoopla about this recall, and frankly, it's a fairly normal recall. I almost feel like this is getting a little overblown, in that the massive stock price hit. I've seen several viral tweets go on about this Rivian recall, just because it's an EV, and here they are competing with Tesla. So you get the whole Tesla bros and all of the Tesla folks into this, and they're recalling about 13,000 vehicles, which is all of their vehicles, over something that they can fix really, really quickly and easily. It's just frankly a very, very normal recall. is it worth the absolute massive hit that their stock has taken? I don't think that it's on the scale of that. And I think a lot of it is honestly being overblown, because look at any new car today.
Yeah.
There are a lot of examples out there that have been like full recall. It's not just like a new manufacturer thing from Rivian that they have to figure things out. You look at like a Ford Explorer or Ford Bronco, and not to like pick on Ford or anything, but they had a lot of issues ramping up the new Explorer and the new Aviator out of their Chicago plant, and there were a lot of manufacturing things that ended up needing recalls. And that's from a car company that has done this for, a century. So I don't think it's the end of the world for Rivian. It's a little small bump in the road, and it looks like they are taking care of it the way that they should be taking care of it. They haven't argued with NHTSA or anything. They haven't done anything that would really cause the ire of a lot of people. It's just a small bump that I feel like they'll recover from just fine, and the stock is probably a bit of an overreaction in my mind. So yeah. That's my take on it.
It's interesting when you look at their stock over like a month or so snapshot. It did drop down to like 31.48 on Monday when the markets opened. It was almost $37 on Thursday, like right before all this sort of went down. But on October 3rd, it was only about $32, and on September 14th, it was $40. Now, I haven't been watching their stock that closely, but they didn't have any prior enormous recalls, so it sort of seems like, I would agree with you that it seems like it's a little bit of an overreaction, but also in some ways that's what the stock market is, right? So, there's always like hot takes and analysts coming in. And, I think one of the bigger like sort of takeaways is it looked like analysts and, other stock market observers have mainly been like stressed, if you will, about that their production outlook has dropped. So that's where you've seen the stock take a beating. And it's fairly in line with what we've seen with Tesla. Only with Tesla, they say, hey, we're going to make fewer cars and their stock goes up. With Rivian, they're like, yeah, we may not hit our targets this year, and boom, they get hit. So we'll see. I drove the R1T last year, and it was a very solid vehicle. It looks good. I'm seeing a number of them on the roads. I'm excited. I think I'm going to get to drive the R1S perhaps next week. So I'm very excited to get into that and kind of, feel, how that like Rivian's technology is in like SUV form. I think there's a market for their products. It's a cool looking truck and SUV, and it's also kind of understated. Reminds me almost of like Volvo or somebody did a truck, and this is the way to do it. It's very understated, kind of cool, kind of techy. So there is a market there for them. We'll see.
Yeah, there's definitely a market, just like you said. You've seen a lot of them out there. I see just a ton of Rivians out there these days. Obviously, we live very near where Rivian lives in Plymouth, Michigan.
That's right.
But, that's some of the Michigan effect, but still, they're out there a lot. I was recently out in California here too, and there are a ton of Rivians out there, especially Silicon Valley, San Francisco area. It's quickly becoming like the new Tesla Model X, or, if you want a utility vehicle, boom, go get yourself a Rivian R1T. Assuming you're in line and can actually get one, because I know that they're still very much ramping up production. So, but yeah, I'm excited to hear what you think about the R1S. That is a super exciting opportunity.
Only thing I didn't like about the R1T is there was a couple of like steering wheel mounted controls that were like harder to do than they should have been, and like unnecessary. Like you could actually pick up on it after like a little bit of time behind the wheel. But to me, it was just like, okay, guys, let's not get cute here. The rest of the truck is very good. Like, you don't need to do this. Me too. I can't wait to drive it. So stay tuned. Future podcast. Gonna probably write something on that. But should be good. You spent some time in the Mustang, the outgoing Mustang, the GT, the Ice White Edition. I believe you took it to the reveal of the new Mustang. So that's quite the chapter in your memoirs. How was this thing?
That I did. So this was pretty cool to sort of come full circle on the Mustang here. Obviously, like you said, so Ford gave us this loan for the GT so that we could have it to drive to the new Mustang reveal, and also to drive in this little Mustang rally called the Mustang Stampede from Ford headquarters to downtown Detroit for the actual reveal of the Mustang. So very cool setting to drive it in, in and amongst hundreds of other Mustangs. That in and of itself was honestly just surreal and really cool to see. But, this was also a little reminder of, just how much fun Ford's Mustang, 7 years on still is. So this was the Ice White Edition, and it was the GT. So that means that it has the 5-liter V8, which is the way that you want to go. However, mine did have the 10-speed automatic transmission. And this was the first time that I've actually driven the Mustang with the 10-speed. I've only ever driven it with a manual or the pre-refresh 6-speed automatic. With the 10-speed, which is also transitioning over to the new car with some modifications to it. Ford says it's supposed to be better. I'm actually glad that it's going to be a little better, because I was not entirely chuffed with it in the old car. Just a little slow to react. Using the paddles is definitely on the slower side versus a lot of automatic transmission these days. But just leave it in automatic mode, and it's very smart. Does its thing. Obviously, that roar of the Coyote V8 has not gotten old since 2015 to now. I also mentioned that I sort of come full circle on this car, because back in 2015 I was actually test driving Fords for Roush, and I got to drive a lot of this Mustang back when it was in prototype testing. So, to see where the car was then and now where the car has finalized, after 7+ years in production, it's just a really, really cool moment. And a lot of my thoughts stay the same in that, wow, Ford obviously was very much onto something when they went IRS. That's probably been said a million times over, but it bears repeating that it really has transformed the Mustang into, a muscle car, into a sports car, and that lineage is being passed on to the next generation Mustang, which, will probably just handle and drive all that better. This was a little bit of a reminder that, there's a reason why Ford is upgrading the interior of the new Mustang as well, just because this one is definitely starting to age. The Ice White does add some interesting and odd appearance bits, in that you have some cool white stitching throughout and some white on the dash, in addition to the whole exterior being painted white along with the wheels. It's just a little something extra that, if you've seen a lot of S550 Mustangs, this is something that you haven't seen yet. If you want a Mustang right at the end of this generation, definitely GT Ice White Edition is a cool way to stand out amongst the crowd, just because there's so many Mustangs and so many configurations out there, that this little special edition is a really neat way to be different. And I certainly was different in that Mustang Stampede. I was the only Ice White Edition. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Little Mustang GT.
There was a lot of I'm almost surprised, because it seems like every possible Mustang was there when I was walking over from the auto show to the Mustang reveal. Many of those stampeding Mustangs were still parked out on Jefferson Avenue, and it was pretty cool to see. So,
my car was there, actually.
I must have walked right by it. I guess I didn't notice it.
No. Ford let me park right out there on Jefferson Avenue. That was the coolest thing. Just everybody rolling into Detroit with the Mustangs. You could hear throughout the city that there were hundreds of Mustangs coming in, just echoing off of the buildings. It was a really, really cool thing that Ford organized there.
I heard they shut down some of the freeways, which when you can consider that also some of the freeways were shut down because the president was in town, it was really a tough day to get anywhere in Metro Detroit. So I'm glad I got to Kobo at like 7 a.m. and it didn't leave until 10. So at night.
Yeah, that was a plus. We rolled through right at rush hour, had all the freeways shut down at 5 p.m. when everybody was about to leave work. So
Yeah.
Apologies to anybody who was stuck in that while we were out gallivanting in our Mustangs.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, we'll go over to electric here. We'll dip into that for a minute. I have been driving the BMW i4. I've been very excited to experience this. It's my first time behind the wheel. It's this is the eDrive 40, if you will. So that means you get 335 horsepower, 217 foot-pounds of torque, and range up to 301 miles. 0 to 60, if you're curious, is 5.5 seconds. It's basically a Grand Coupe, if you will. So it's good size, like, 4 Series sedan. But I've been really enjoying driving it. I think part of me assumed it would maybe not handle all that well, but it's been good. I feel like in some ways the batteries help. The weight is strategic. Steering has been solid. I don't know. I guess I'm starting to like how BMWs look because I also like how this one looks. After criticizing them for a while, I've been tough to find one that I really don't like in the last couple of years. I've been the guy who's like, no, the grills are okay. So, all that aside, though, I think this is a good, very sort of, moderate approach. If you want to get it, you're a BMW loyalist and you want to drive an electric car, well, hey, here you go. It's 4665 reading the spec sheet as far as curb weight. So it's a little heavy, but somewhat par for the course given the level of equipment and just the size of sedans these days. And I've been enjoying it. I really like all that torque in a BMW sedan like that. It's the first time I think I've experienced BMW's true, foray here into electric vehicles, and I like it. I gonna enjoy driving it the rest of the week.
Yeah, I drove the i4 M50 along with I know several other of us on staff drove that M50 about 2 months ago.
Okay.
And that thing ruled. It just like you said, it's like a 4 Series Grand Coupe. There's really no other way to describe it because that's exactly what it is. Take a 4 Series Grand Coupe, take the engine out, put a big battery pack under the floor and electric motors. And that's the way it drives too. That was honestly like one of the most refreshing things about it is that it looks like a normal car, drives like a normal car. The interior is just like a normal BMW 4 Series. There's nothing like funky or extra weird going on there. It's just a BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe, a 4-door with a hatchback. It drives really well, and it also happens to be electric. And that was really nice, because obviously BMW has, been a bit funky with their EVs in the past. We had the i3, which was absolutely wild. And the iX is definitely another very funky one. But if you just want a normal car that's an EV, that is super nice, very luxurious, really quick, and also fun to drive, the i4 is honestly right at the top of my list. It is, and it really doesn't give up a whole lot in terms of electric charging technology. You have good range. There's not a lot of downsides to this thing, and just like you, I also like the way it looks. The grille is very proportional to the body as a whole. So yeah, big fan of the i4.
I think if you're just looking for an electric sedan that you can probably get, and mine came in at about $68,000, going over the window sticker here. It's out there, it's attainable, it's available. It's kind of weird to say this. Maybe it's not necessarily the sexy option, because people are like, the Rivians, the Teslas of the world. This is just a plain old, BMW sedan, but it also drives very well. So, yeah, it's Definitely a good time. And I also imagine an SL AMG 63 is a good time. Almost we were going to do a swap for that. Ended up not working out for a couple of reasons. But how was your weekend, that hot rod of a muscle coupe?
Oh man, I was super excited for this one. As soon as I saw it show up, I know we were we were actually all gathered together there, so we all got to watch it roll in as one to see the brownish matte with the red top roll in, and just seeing the thing, in person for the first time. This was the first time that I'd actually seen an SL. It's a real stunner. I mean, for a long time, I've really considered the Lexus LC500 to be, like the best looking, hands down, like personal coupe or convertible that you can buy. The SL gives it a run for its money. This thing is just like pure elegance, pure beauty, in every sense of the word. And it even has things for the AMG enthusiast. You got the little Pan Americana grille up front, the awesome quad exhaust from AMG in the back. So, it's not all understated elegance. There's also some real aggression and sportiness into that design. So over the weekend and over the long week, I spent a lot of time looking at this thing and just admiring it. Driving it was a ton of fun too. So I drove this thing, and I had some sort of perspective from the AMG GT in my mind too, because we had one of those about 3 months ago. So I recently-ish hopped out of that and then, hop into the new AMG SL, which is a totally new platform, totally new interior. Everything is new about it. But for all intents and purposes, this SL is halfway replacing an AMG GT convertible that we will eventually get in the future, based off the same platform. The specs off the top are really awesome. This one was the SL63, so the 4-liter twin-turbo V8, 577 horsepower. It's a lot of horsepower, 0 to 60 in 3.5. And I actually noticed that Mercedes has a new little launch control gimmick, maybe half safety, but certainly a lot of fun in that they tighten the seat belts really, really tight across your chest when you actually activate launch control. And you are glued to the seat the whole time that you're doing that. And as you brake, it's a lot of fun, and it's certainly a fun party trick if you have somebody in the car. They're like, "Oh my God, what is this?" Yeah. It's don't worry. It's supposed to do this. No, you just hopping in the car and normal driving around is one of the most pleasant things ever, because one thing that the AMG GT didn't have that this thing does have is a very compliant and comfortable ride. They've done a lot to really improve that and give this thing such a dual personality, and that it is so comfortable to drive around everywhere. But then you can crank it up into the full Sport Plus, and the body is like stiff as a board. It has active anti-roll bars, which, stiffen up and loosen, which is what gives you that amazing, super comfy ride when you want it, and also super stiff ride when you want that. And then all of the crazy tech stuff. This has every single thing pretty much that you get on the new S-Class, which, yes, it should. It's the SL. This one happened to cost $205,000, which is kind of wild when you think about it. I know that was one thing I was a little alarmed by when I saw the pricing released for the SL. It's like, wow, this thing is just as expensive or more expensive than a 911 Turbo. So you got some really stiff competition there. But, at the end of the day, I really came away thinking that, this is not, if you're in the market for 911 Turbo, you may not be super into this car, and that this is definitely, less serious. It can drive very, very well when you want it to, but it's definitely not as focused or as hardcore as like a 911 Turbo is. This is definitely more of a grand touring and just everyday, super great everyday convertible versus the 911. So really, I mean, God, I cannot say enough good things about this car, and it's definitely for somebody out there. Hopefully, a lot of somebodies, because I want to see more of them on the road. Because, like, going back to the start, beautiful, beautiful car.
Yeah. Someday, perhaps this will go electric. I think it's a good sized car. I think there's plenty of room to get some batteries hooked up in there, and make something that's fun to drive. And I've always really liked the SL. I think there's certain cars that just kind of resonate with you. You get to sample them over time. And, if I were in the market for something like this, I would probably go 911. But perhaps, and I think a lot of people would, but I would strongly look at an SL. I love the Grand Touring layout. I like the design over the years. I like the history of the car. I drove a 1962, I think, SL. It was bright red, convertible.
Gorgeous.
I drove that. Yeah, it was amazing. It was one of the coolest things I've ever done in this job. So, I get why some people are like, sign me up for this. Like Porsche's great, but I'm going Benz. So, yeah. I mean, I imagine did you wake up the neighbors with that engine? Must have made some noise.
It's a noisy engine, but it's also really quiet. So you can put it in the fully closed valved exhaust mode, and it's actually really discreet.
Got it. Okay.
So you can be a good neighbor. You can also be a bad neighbor when you put the exhaust into, as AMG calls it, the powerful mode.
Got it. Okay.
Then it's quite loud, and the exhaust is very crackly, pop, bang, pop. When you do have it in the full aggressive modes, it's quite the rowdy thing. And with the top down, of course, which thankfully I was able to do, it's even louder. So gotta love that. And I should also note that it's semi-utilitarian. Went to pick up some pumpkins and some mums. Did some fall shopping in it.
Yeah.
Yes, the mums fit in the back seat. This thing has back seats. 2 of them. They're very small, but you can fit probably a small child in there. I know that you tested your car seat in there earlier this week, and it worked. It fit. So forget about buying that GLE or GLS, everybody. The car seat fits in the SL.
Yeah.
Go buy the SL.
There you go.
That's the end conclusion here, I think.
We're giving you the dispensation. You can get the irresponsible midlife crisis car. You can do it. It's out there. Have some fun. The car seat will fit.
Exactly. We verified it.
Indeed. I'm impressed. How are the mums holding up? I was watering mine this morning, and it seems like they may not make it through October, which is rough.
They're good right now. They were in like partial bloom when we bought them, in hopes that, maybe in like a week or so, they'll be in like full bloom. They're happy right now. Okay. I know that the mums we got last year too, those lasted until there was snow on the ground in like January. So I'm hoping that these are just as sturdy. We just got them from a nice little greenhouse about like 20, 30 miles north of here. So crossing my fingers. They're really great. I got 1 orange and 1 purple.
Nice.
So should look good on the porch.
My bright yellow ones looked spectacular for like a week in September. And now it's like 7:45 this morning. I'm staying on my porch watering them like, these guys are done. Like, what is this? Come on. Like, mums are not cheap. Let me put it that way. So I was a little bit annoyed.
They're not.
I was able to get them in the back of an EV6 though. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, those suckers are like, it just depends what you buy, but they could be as much as $15 each. Yeah. So you kind of hope that they last the whole season, right?
We're going to try to water them maybe twice a day going forward, see if we can get them back where they need to be, propped up by Halloween. And then after that, it's gravy, we'll say.
Let them go. The snow is coming anyways, right? So
That's true. Close things out here with the Lexus RX 500h. This is the high-powered hybrid version of the RX. I tested what's actually a prototype. I didn't realize that until I had driven it for a little bit, but I didn't really notice any major differences. So everything, the fit and finish seemed about up to par. It was an F Sport, which was cool. It had the color, which everybody noticed, called Copper Crest. It's sort of like, how could I it's like a rosé. Like, think of like a sparkling wine. That's how it looks like in the glass, maybe with the sun hitting it a little bit. Really attractive color. I, highly suggest you go for it. There's some pretty cool paint colors out there that, you can get. There used to be like crazy paint was like a option or it was hard to get. Like, just tick the box and go with this. So, yeah, that was cool. It's 366 total horsepower, if you will. It had four-wheel or all-wheel steering, I guess. Let me phrase this here. Dynamic rear steering is what they call it, which I did not expect because it's not that big of a crossover. It just didn't seem like it was very necessary. And I had experienced that in the Mercedes EQS, the AMG, a week ago. And that thing's a barge. It's great when the rear wheels can kind of help you out when you're maneuvering through the neighborhood or whatnot. But this thing, I was like pulling out of my driveway, making like 90-degree, like straight turns. I was like, wow, this thing handles really well. And I looked it up and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Hey, this is cool. And I think it's actually a feature that is very usable and can help a lot of drivers. So this is, I'd say, one of the first times I've tested it in what's basically a more mainstream application. It doesn't get much more mainstream luxury than the Lexus RX. Granted, this was a more expensive one with a lot of things going on. So I like that. It's, other than that, it's, it's the hybrid model, of course. Lexus looks are basically love it or hate it. I think most people like them because they sell a ton of them. And, we put a lot of stuff in it, car seat, dog, everybody was in there. Very, I would say, drivable. Let's put it that way. Crossover. It's the right crossover for a lot of people because, again, they sell a ton of them. It had the unfortunate distinction of following the Hummer in my personal fleet. So people just weren't as excited to drive it, which, whatever, that's the way the world works. But very, very solid entry in the segment. In some ways, I think Lexus has done a good job of using design to separate themselves from like Mercedes and BMW, Audi, etc. Not just the Germans, but like Cadillac and other entries out there. Volvo, where Lexus and Toyota used to be pretty generic, I think. Now the Lexus vehicles are often very much the style makers in their segments. They're a little more polarizing. So, after the Hummer left the driveway, the Lexus was, the vehicle for the weekend, and it got a lot of attention in its own right, too. So it's pretty fun to drive. The hybrid, I think, in some ways is the powertrain to get because it's a little spunkier. You get up to 36 miles per gallon combined, so that's a respectable figure for all that power. So, yeah, I mean, it was a good weekend in the car. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the RX is. This new RX has really appealed to me from the start. Like when they revealed it, like it looks super low to the ground. It looks very sporty. It doesn't look like the RX that I've been used to for so long at this point, which is, Lexus sort of really got this smallish luxury SUV segment going with that car. And it's just been, one of the boring, solid, safe choices amongst luxury SUVs for a long time. But now, honestly, the RX is one of the more exciting options. You have so many powertrain options, including this one, which it sort of looks very similar to like the Toyota RAV4 Prime's powertrain.
Yeah.
Plug-in hybrid, a ton of range. And it sounds like with the F Sport, it's also meant to be pretty fun to drive. That dynamic rear steer sounds like it could really improve the handling. It just doesn't sound like that very staid, conservative RX of yesteryear, especially when you talk about that paint, it looks sort of like a rosé. That is not what I expect to see out of a Lexus RX, honestly. That's more Lexus LC, Lexus IS, some of the more sportier models from Lexus, but here you are, you can get it with the RX. And I think, that all of these things that they're doing to the car are gonna, really advance its appeal, and that the typical RX buyers they're still gonna buy an RX, but you could really appeal to somebody that, maybe they're looking at something like the Acura RDX or an Infiniti QX50 or, just something that was a little sportier beforehand, that now they look over at this Lexus and they're like, wow, whoa, this is a plug-in hybrid with over 350 horsepower, all-wheel drive, dynamic rear steer, all the F-Sport styling. There's a lot to be said for that, and I feel like it could totally sway some people over there, especially people who are looking at plug-in hybrids, because I know that Toyota makes some of the best plug-in hybrid powertrains out there at this point. So I too am very excited to eventually get some wheel time in this new RX.
It'll get you to 60 in 5.9 seconds, which I think is kind of bonkers.
Not bad.
I mean, for an SUV that's a crossover SUV, there's room to put stuff in there. I was a little surprised how quick it could be. I think it's also a situation too where a little bit like with the i4, it's like they're trying to sort of get their existing consumers, moving over to electrified options. The i4 is obviously all electric. This Lexus is a hybrid setup. So it's interesting. I think, we're seeing companies as they're trying to sort of get down through the, this change, if you will, this evolution. And, we'll see. It was a fun car to drive. And I think it's, again, we were able to get a ton of stuff in there. Yeah, I mean, and again, get that color. I think Copper Crest, check it out. It's definitely attractive. Let's put it that way. All right. Well, that's about it for this week. I already mentioned that I've had Jacko pumpkin beer. What are you drinking this week?
Yeah, so I've actually been mixing up some mixed drinks as of late. I bought some apple cider while I was out picking up those mums, actually,
there you go.
From a local cider mill. So I've been doing some interesting mixtures, with I did sort of a hot toddy, but with apple cider, which was fun, good on like a nice cold evening. And then I've done some other things, which sort of like a Moscow Mule, but with cider tossed in there too. So I've just been like experimenting, going online, searching up like cider mixed drinks out there, and I don't know, just really embracing the fall and October spirit as of late. And I do have some other pumpkin beers in my fridge as well, but I've sort of set those aside for the time being, and I'm focusing on trying out what I can do with cider with my mixology.
That sounds pretty good. I am actually a big fan of ciders in the fall. I mentioned it on the podcast last week, so I apologize for being redundant, but they go down smooth. You get that kind of apple, that tart taste. It feels right on a crisp October, November evening. And honestly, I think they're good year round. One of our former editors here used to always drink them in the spring, which, kind of like the snow is melting around you, crack a cider. That sounds pretty good. And of course, in the winter, a cozy cider.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love cider. I don't know if you've tried mead yet, but mead is pretty good. Yeah. Oh man, that is another awesome fall drink. There's one really good meadery near here, Bee Nectar Meadery. They actually do a trivia night that I go to every so often. They make some really awesome, cool stuff. All sorts of, they do still mead, they do carbonated, and it's just a real wild flavor trip that you can go on through there. They're in Ferndale, actually. If y'all are around Michigan, good stuff. Highly recommend it, especially in the fall.
All right. If we're meeting your meads, see what I did there? I know. You should probably edit that out there, Eric. I digress. That's all the time we have this week, thankfully, on the Autoblog Podcast. Before my terrible puns continue, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Send us your Spend My Monies. That's podcast@autoblog.com. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next week.